In today's video, we will see how to create this express entry profile as a Canadian experience class skilled worker. So what is the requirement? This page will give you the requirement, and I'm sure you would know by now. You need to have a Canadian skilled work experience. That means you need to have worked in Canada in your skilled category, and then you have to also show your language ability. Then you must have at least 1 year of skilled work experience in Canada or equal amount of part-time work experience in the 3 years before you apply. You have gained your work experience by working in Canada while authorized to work under temporary resident status, that is on a work permit, be it open or closed work permit. Show that you have performed the action in the lead statement of the occupation description in the national occupation classification. So you have to show that, and most of the main duties listed. Then for the skilled worker experience that you're showing, your training, education experience and responsibility categories falls under one of these categories, and that must be paid work including paid wages or earned commission. What is not counted is volunteer work or unpaid internship. So be clear on this. And who is not eligible for Canadian experience class? If you're a refugee claimant in Canada, you're working without authorization, your work experience was gained without temporary resident status in Canada. Then they have given, if you are a self-employed or student work experience, then in that case, what the eligibility is. So you can read through this. And a lot of people have confusion regarding how this full-time and part-time calculation is done. So this is the link. If you come here, you have worked total of 30 hours per week for 1 year in 3 years before you apply. It's very clear. If it is a full-time job, 30 hours per week for 12 months is equal to 1 year full-time. That is 1560 hours. If you're in part-time, 15 hours per week for 24 months is equal to 1 year full-time, 1560 hours. You can work as many part-time job as you need to meet this requirement. Then full-time work at more than one job, 30 hours per week for 12 months at more than one job is equal to 1 year full-time, that is 1560 hours. And what is important is we do not count any hour you work about 30 hours per week, which means even if you're working 60 hours per week, it will only be considered 30 hours. So I hope this part is clear. Once you type express entry profile, this is the official website where you come and click here. And once you click here, how to check eligibility, I have made a separate video. You can find that in the link. And then once you have found your eligibility, you will sign into your secure account by clicking here. Once we come down, if you don't have, you'll have to register for an account. Again, I made a separate video on how to register, and everything I have covered in detail there. Once you have registered and you have your GC and username password, you click here, you enter the GC detail, that is you sign in, and once you sign in and then continue, you will get a passcode sent to your email ID. And once the one-time passcode entry is made and you continue, you get this message, authentication success. Once this is done, continue, then you come and check the terms of condition and you say I accept. You will get identity validation which you had set up through the GC key. You enter that detail and then continue. So this is the dashboard where you come down and you see here, because I had gone through the eligibility check process, this is how the result was shown. If you don't know what this is, I have made a separate video on how this was done. Once you do that, then you come to this. Here it shows the express entry profile. So if you see this screen, you can click continue profile. And if you don't see this screen, you will come to this screen. So here you'll have to enter your last name and first name as it is shown in your passport, travel document or national identity document. So in all case, you would have your passport. Make sure you enter exactly as it is required. Last name first, then comes first name, your gender and your date of birth. Once this entry is made, you come down and then click next. Here you select the marital status, and in case you are married, how to add spouse detail, that also we will see. If you're single, the form becomes much smaller. You don't have to add any other detail. So I'm selecting here married and then clicking next. Will this person accompany you to Canada? My response here is yes. In case if it is no, you will select that. If you're single, you will not be getting this. So once this is selected, click next. What is your spouse common law partner's last name, first name, gender and date of birth? That will get entered. Again, if you're single, you will not see the screen. So let me make this entry. Once the entry is made, click next. And then you come to this profile section. You see here, if you're single, you will be getting only this part. And if you are with spouse, then this additional form will have to be filled. So let's start filling in the detail. Once we click here on the start form, come down. So this is pre-filled. You just click next. Here, make sure that the detail what you're filling matches exactly as in your passport or travel document. So here, this is by default what was entered earlier comes up here. Then country of birth as per passport and city and town of birth as it is given in the passport. Once this is done, click next. Marital status, it shows up as married. If you're single, it will show up as single or whatever status you had choose. Click next. Here you'll have to give passport or national identity document. So you'll have to select from this drop down if you have any one of this, and I'm sure you will have this. So I'm selecting response here as yes, and then you will select what that is, whether it is passport, travel document, national identity document. In all cases, it's going to be passport. So select that part and then document number as exactly shown in the document. So make that entry. And then country and territory of issue. Once that is entered, come down, issue date, expiry date. This has to be filled. When you submit your application, you have to get invitation to apply. And once you get that, you submit your document. It's going to be around 1 year, and in sometimes it can be more also. So make sure you have a passport with a good validity. Otherwise, you will have to again go and update when the process is going through. So to avoid any confusion, any delay, better to have a good validity passport. You check that beforehand. This is going to save a lot of headache for you later on. So once the issue date, expiry date is entered and you save and add. Once you click save and add, you see here the detail comes here, and then you can modify if you want. You can delete and then add again. So once this is done, click next. So here you have to answer if you have applied for Immigration and Refugee and Citizenship Canada before. For the Canadian experience class, the response would be yes, as either you would have entered Canada as a student and then you worked for some years before you are applying for the Canadian experience class, or you came on a work permit, on a company assignment or on a open work permit, and then after spending time in your work, whatever the minimum requirement is, then you are applying for Canadian experience class. So in that case, the response is yes. And then if you have applied for express entry before, you will choose your answer. In my case, I am saying no. And then the UCI number, it will be either a 8-digit or 10-digit number. If you are on a student visa, if you came on a student visa, check your document. It will have that UCI number. And if you came on work permit, again, you will find UCI number. So make sure to make that entry here. Then country of citizenship, you can enter more than one country if you have dual citizenship. India does not have dual citizenship. So here I have entered India. Here you can add or insert the row if you have more than one country citizenship. Once this is done, come down. You will choose the country of residence. Here I am choosing Canada, and what province or territory of your primary place of residence is. I'm in Ontario, so I select that, and then the postal code. Remember, when you're entering, you have to give a space, otherwise this will not accept. So once you write this, click next. Here, family detail, this includes you, spouse, partner, dependent children, and their dependent children. So the definition of family is also given here. Just make sure you read this. I'm selecting 2 people, including me. And depending on this, the proof of fund part, that is how much Canadian dollar will I be bringing. So this is the proof of fund table. And good part is you don't need to show that you have enough money to support yourself and your family if you are applying under Canadian experience class, or you're authorized to work in Canada, or you have a valid job offer even if you apply under Federal Skilled Worker Program or Field Skilled Trade Program. So you can read this more in detail, and once you read this, you can enter the amount what you have. In your case, proof of fund is not going to impact you. So whatever money you have, you can make that entry. Once you make that entry, you click next. With relation to the relatives in Canada, if you have any relative who is a citizen or permanent resident of Canada, your response will be yes. In my case, I'm selecting no, and then save and exit. So as you keep completing, you will see the status as complete, and you can come and update the form again if you want till the time you are submitting this form completely. Coming to the contact detail, let's start the form. Here, language of correspondence, I'm choosing English. You have to select your option and then come down, click next. Here you will enter your email address. This is where all the correspondence will come. So enter the email address, and once that is entered, save and exit. Come to study and language. Start here. Have you finished high school or any higher education, including university, college, or vocational training? You have to select your answer. Here my response is yes. And then field of study. This is where you will start filling in the detail. I will start with the highest and then keep going down. Computer and information technology. Since what year? That detail will get entered. Year and month. Here I have pre-filled for the situation where the study has been done in Canada. So you can see here, since what year, that detail is entered. Then this is my current study. If that is the case, then you say yes. In my case, I am selecting no. Then to when this finished, that is entered, and complete full academic year, 2 years, because this was a master's. So I have entered here. If you have any question, you can go and click here, and you will get to see the final transcript what you have to know what to enter here. Then was it full-time or part-time study? I have entered full-time. Then standing and end of study period, degree awarded has been selected, so you will select from this option. Then country of study, since this was done in Canada, this entry shows Canada. Province or territory, Ontario, so from the drop down it gets selected. City and town of study, that gets entered. Then the postal code and name of the university. Then what is the level of education? This comes from the drop down. So I have selected master's degree. And was this awarded Canadian degree diploma certificate? So I select yes. And based on that, there are further details which have been asked. Was this degree, diploma or certificate? Yes. So these are all required mandatory field you see here. And then designated learning institute number. If you don't know where to find, once you click here, you come to this website, Designated Learning Institute, and this is a place where you can go and enter the university name, and you will get all the detail here. For example, University of Toronto, Toronto campus. This is the Designated Learning Institute, and it says yes for the postgraduate work permit program. So this is the place where you can find the detail. And again, I copied detail from here, the DLI number, and that is what has been entered here. And the program was in English or French. For this, you select yes or no, depending on your situation. I have selected yes. And then you come down. Was this study based on any award that required to go back to home country to apply the knowledge and skill? This includes some award from Global Affairs Canada. My response here is no. If it is yes, you will enter that. And then did I complete 50% of the study or training program courses through in-person learning? Here I have chosen no. And a lot of people make mistake by selecting yes. So depending on your scenario, you will have to choose yes or no. Let me explain that in simple English. If you attended language school where more than 50% of the courses were focused on teaching you English or French, your answer would be yes. If your education program was not primarily focused on teaching English or French as second language, then your response would be no. So a lot of people by selecting yes have lost point. So depending on your circumstances, you will have to choose the right option between yes or no. And did I study in Canada for at least 8 months in order to earn this degree or diploma or certificate? The response is yes. And then did I study full-time for at least 8 months to earn this degree, diploma or certificate? The response is yes. So once all this response is done, you can go and click and save and add. Once you add, you see this is how the detail is seen. You can modify, delete and enter again if you want. If not, just keep as it is. And then you go and click next. So what we saw was for someone who had studied in Canada. Now, for example, you came on a work permit and you did not study here. Let me fill that part. Come to education history. Now I'll just go and delete this row. And then we'll start filling in the detail. Let me show you one by one. You see, this is for someone who had studied outside. And here I'm selecting higher education completed. Yes. Field of study, selecting from this drop down. So make sure you're choosing the closest one to which your study is. Here I've selected computing and information technology. Since what year? Start year and month. And then here I'm showing this is my current study, no. Then when it finished, that detail, complete full academic year, It's a master's of 2 years. That is what has been entered. Again, if you're confused, you can click here and you can look at your transcript or your certificate to know how many years. Whether it was full-time or part-time, that has to be entered. And then standing at end of study period. So any certificate, diploma or degree awarded, that is entered, and then country of study, city, university, and then once you come down, level of education, what that was, that is entered, and was awarded Canadian degree, diploma, certificate for this period of study. The response here in my case is no, because this was done outside. And based on this, I am getting asked, has education credential assessment been done within past 5 years for this degree, diploma or certificate required? So if you have a credential outside, then you have to get the education credential assessment done. This is the designated organization from where you can get your education credential assessment done. And you must come to this website to see whichever organizations are currently designated. So sometimes this changes. I got my credential done through World Education Service when I was immigrating to Canada. Coming back here, the education credential assessment has to be there. So my response is yes. And then organization which issued from this drop down, I'm showing World Education Service. You'll have to select from wherever you're getting it done. Then when that was issued, that date has to be mentioned and the certificate number, which will be mentioned on the certificate itself. Once you enter that, you enter what the equivalency was given in your case. Here from this list, I chose the equivalency, what was given by the World Education Service. You'll have to select yours and then save and add. Once it is done, you can see this. And again, if you want to modify or delete, you can do that and add again. Since the education credential was done and equivalency is given, I have entered this and I did not enter any more detail like the bachelor's and other information, because of course, the logic is that if you have done your master's, you would have done your bachelor's. If you want, you can go and add those details to here. You can just go add all the detail and save here. That will come and sit here. So it will come as a next row. So once that is done, I've shown you for someone who studied in Canada and for someone who has studied outside of Canada, both scenarios. And then we click next. There is this official language section. Again, when it comes to communication, English or French has to be selected. So I chose English. And if you know both, you will make that selection here. Neither is not a response here. And then official language assessment, I got it done. So I'm selecting yes. And from this drop down, I selected IELTS. And the version is general training. Then once we come down here, language test date, when the test result was, this again exactly as it is given in the certificate, and then the certificate number and the detail of the score what was given. Once that is entered, and I'm saying I don't have any other language test assessment that is French skill. If you have, then you'll have to select yes and fill in those detail. Once this is done, save and exit, and we'll come down, go to application detail start form. So here I chose all province and territory because I had done very little research at that point of time. If you had any preference to province or territory, you can consider clicking only those. Here by authorizing the British Columbia and Ontario. So these are the two for which this authorization has to be given. So you will choose your response. What happens is in express entry, in case under provincial nominee program, if any of these province have opportunity for your NOC, then they might extend the invitation to you. So here I have selected all province. You will have to choose your option. And once that is done, you come and click next. Has this name received a nomination certificate from province or territory? If it is yes, you'll have to click yes and then select the province, and then you'll have to save and exit. If not, select no and then save and exit. Once we come down, so in this representative section, you'll have to choose your selection. I had none, so I selected no. So you can choose representative, designated individual, or both. Whatever the option is, you make that selection and then save and exit. We are on the work history part. Start primary occupation, that is 5-digit NOC that you'll have to select from here, and you must know your NOC. If you don't know, I have shared my experience of how I found the NOC, and sometimes can be confusing that two different NOC looks similar. How I was able to navigate, I have shared that as an example in the video. All the links are in the description. In my case, I selected the knock which was applicable, and then I showed from when to when I worked in that occupation. So made the selection since when I was eligible, and after making that selection, click next. Do you have certificate of qualification from Canadian province or territory? In my case, it was no. You'll have to select your response and then click next. Do you have job offer in Canada? And that must meet these requirements. Again, in my case, the response is no. You'll have to make a selection. If it is yes, then you will have to enter whether it is full-time, continuous, or at least 1 year. You have to select the response, enter the knock code, job title, and the detail what is mentioned here, including the detail of employer and other details. So in my case, since it was no, click next. So this work history part, this is used for the calculation of score. Do I have any work history? From this, I selected yes. Since what year, that detail is entered, and I have selected this is my current job. If you deselect, then you will have to give to and fro, and then you will keep adding the work experience what you are showing. So I'll just do this part here. Hours per week, look at your employment letter, and there the hour would be mentioned. And as I said, whatever the number of hour per week is, maximum counted will be 30 hours. Then you enter the knock code and then the title what is there on your job offer letter. Then once we come down here, company name, if you are self-employed, you'll have to click this part, and if not, just leave it as it is. Country, and you will select the country, province, city, then the address and postal code. Once we come down, do any of the following condition apply? Working legally in Canada during this time, a person must have been working on a valid work permit or exempt from needing one, and legal status the whole time that they were in Canada, not stayed longer than the approved time period. So here the response is yes in my case. And then studying full time, this is not applicable, so I have selected no. If it is yes, you'll have to select that. Which of this category does the job fall under? Work permit required, no LMAI required. So there are 3 sections here, and I have chosen this part. Basically, in this, usually when you come on international mobility program, that is the company is sending you for work, or intra-company transfer program where the multinational companies transfer to Canadian branch or subsidiary without needing LMIA. In that case, this option gets selected, and if work permit and LMIA is required, then you will have to select the other option. Make sure you're aware of what your circumstances is, and then make a selection. Once the detail is selected, save and add, and then you will see the detail here. In case you want to modify, you can go and do that. You want to delete and re-enter, you can do that. And as I said, if you have to add some more job title, you still have that option here. Once you add here and save and add, that will become the second row. Once this is done, click next. This is the research part where IRCC is asking for some information. I have selected yes to this. So if you want to choose no, you are more than welcome to do that. And here, have you looked for job in Canada into primary occupation? My response here is yes, and I've done some research. Have you checked to see if your education and work experience in your primary occupation would be accepted in Canada? I said yes. And then from these options, I chose work-related and professional organization. So you'll have to select your response here. Then some jobs are regulated in Canada. You would need license or certification to practice these jobs. The job what I am into, it does not require. So I have selected no. If it is yes, then you will have to select these options, what is in your case. So I keep it at no, and then save and exit. So now the primary applicant detail has been completed. If you're single, once this is complete, this part won't come. If you are with spouse, then you'll have to fill in the detail for the spouse. Personal details, study and language, work history. So let's quickly do this. Once we click here, come down, this is pre-filled. So click next, select the country of birth and town. So once that entry is made, click next. Then whether the spouse is Canadian citizen or permanent resident. In my case, the answer is no. If it is yes, then you select yes. I'm keeping it as no, and then next. And does the spouse have a relative who is citizen or permanent resident of Canada? The relative must be 18 years or older and living in Canada. So once you click here, the definition of relative is given here. Okay, read this. part, and in our case it is no, save and exit. Once this is done, come down, study and language. So spouse education detail, here I have pre-filled the detail. So for the higher education I have said yes. Field of study, from this drop down I have selected what that is, and then which year that has been mentioned. This is the current year study, no. If it is yes, you have to select that, and then when this was finished, that is mentioned. Once we come down here, how many years of academic year completed, that has been mentioned, then whether it is full-time or part-time, and what was awarded at the end of this period, where this study was done, city and town, university name, and then level of education, again that is selected from the drop down. Once we come down here, for this, my response is no, no Canadian degree diploma. Now, for the education credentials, I'm saying yes. And then organization, as I said, World Education Service was one of the service provider. There are many others from whom one detail can be got. So once the details are mentioned, when this was got, and the number is entered, and what the education equivalent was given. So once that is added, next, for the knowledge of official languages, from this I am selecting English. You'll have to select the option what is there. So here, has any test been taken? My response is yes, and show IELTS. Language test version is general training by default, and when this was taken, that is also mentioned along with the result date, which is straight out of the certificate. So once that detail is entered, then comes the certificate number. When the certificate number is entered and the test result entered, making sure that there is no mistake, exactly as it is given in the certificate. Then for the French language skill, my response is no. If you have, you can select yes. Then once we come down here, save and exit. Now the last section for spouse is the work history section. Start here. In case there is any work experience, you will select yes and then fill in the detail. Here my response is no, and then save and exit. So now you see here, everything shows complete. You still have option to check, cross-check. You can go to form, make sure everything is correct. And once you know that everything is correct, you continue. And you come to this declaration and electronic signature section. So here, once we come down, you see here, please select I agree. And then again, consent for use of information for research and evaluation purpose. I'm selecting I agree. Then come down here, you will have to give a digital signature and then enter the security question which you had created earlier. A lot of people make mistake here writing the name. So you see, first is the given name and the last name, unlike how it started earlier. So make sure you are entering the given name first, last name second, and then you will be asked security question. And once you enter that and you sign in, come down. Now you are ready to transmit. So you click here. Congratulations, you have successfully submitted your application. Here 3 steps are given. You can read at your own time. Exit questionnaire. And then you see here, now you can see express entry application is created with the application number, name, when it was submitted, and what is the current status. Message also shows as new. And then you can go to action. You can check your full application status. And if you want to withdraw anytime, you can also do that by going here. Now, also one thing you need to remember is that whenever there is a change to your profile, for example, now that I have entered the pool, it is based on my current score is based on the age and other factor. If something changes, and the score again would change accordingly. For example, if I grow 1 more year older, then the point would reduce. So all this impact, you will be able to see that in this profile whenever that happens. And so keep looking at this part. Let's go here, check full application status. This is the express entry profile status, and based on what the input was given, everything is here. You can see that the minimum entry criteria, August 27th, is mentioned, and then on the right hand side, candidate information, that is all you know, my detail. And once we come down here, and also the dependent detail, if I come and click here, the dependent detail, what was filled, that will be seen. Let me come down. Here you see minimum entry criteria, August 27th, same thing is written here. What is important is how much point did I get. So here you see what am I eligible for, Canadian experience class, met, and what is not met, that is shown. Now the overall score is 518, and then the score breakdown is given below. This is how you would also get all the detail. Then once we come down here, you will be able to see all the detail for the express entry profile. If you look at the CRS trend, this is the place where you can find the CRS trend. I'm sure you would be tracking that. And you see here the last draw, which happened on August 14 for Canadian experience class, and the lowest CRS score was 509, whereas what I have got now is 518. So anytime the draw happens, I will be getting the invitation to apply. Looking at the trend, you see here 509, 510, 515. So I'm much above the trend line so far. Let's see when the next invitation to apply comes for the Canadian experience class. So friends, you saw how simple it is to create express entry profile. If you have everything ready with you, that is, if you have your language proficiency score, your education credentials, your work experience, and all those details are there with you, you will be able to create your express entry file. I hope you find this video useful, and do like, share, and comment. Thank you for watching.